all connected. They're all reptilian creatures, and if they see something, but don't forget they're the puppets. You're absolutely right about that. It's like all the presidents. They're puppets. The the big guys are the reptilians underneath the planet. Which is the draconians, Anunnaki. They've also got a base of the Greys, and it's interesting because and Luciferians, of course, as well. Their agenda is to take over this planet. They don't want us here particularly. We're just cattle food to them. He said, I don't understand that when she gets angry, she can throw me across the room 20 feet. And I said, it's not her, it's the attachment she's got. And what they can do is, you know, very quickly, if you're having an argument, you're not focusing on the person. And suddenly, when you're not, focusing on the person, what they can do is switch in this dimension for a quarter of a second. They're huge beings. They're like 10'7" tall. They grab you, throw you, and then they switch out again. And you're looking back thinking, how did that person like pick me up and throw me like a rag doll? And the answer is it wasn't them. It's the entity that's attached them. In a high vibrational body, they're not active. But when you get emotion, say you get emotion, it bleeds into the woman's breast, or it bleeds into the womb, or it bleeds into the prostate. It bleeds, depending on what the emotion is, it affects different areas of the body. And so when the vibration drops, the pathogens mutate the cells, turn into tumor. So when people say, oh, I've got cancer, they think it's a death wish. It's not. A cancer tumor is just saying, hey, body's off balance. You better pay attention to me, or I will pay attention to you. And I've seen it, I've seen miracles, people getting out of cancers, by releasing the emotion, the primary cause, and getting rid of the pathogens. So all these things, even with, for example, digestive issues, I'm seeing at the moment pancreatic enzymes are on decline. Why is that? Because emotion bleeds into the pancreas, the enzymes aren't produced, so you're not digesting your food properly. Plus, if you've got an entity stuck down here, what's it going to do to your intestines down here? It's going to lower their vibration. So when you eat, the food gets further down, it backs up, you feel blah. A lot of people feel, oh, and it's because you've got an entity attachment. Ferments in the wrong place, so you're not absorbing nutrients, burns holes in the intestinal lining called leaky gut, gets worse, becomes pockets in the intestinal lining called diverticulitis. So all these things, most of the things, obviously, if you get poisoned or something else, that's different. But most illnesses are caused primarily by emotion. So it's kind of crazy. That's why they attack people. That's why they want you in fear, because you're good fodder for them. They can feed off that loosh of energy. Plus, they know that you're going to start being sick, and of course, all the reptilian agenda with big pharma and big agriculture and big this and that. They get fed money by people being sick. If a race come here and start abducting people because your government signed a contract to say you could, is that a violation of education? That's a violation because, you weren't told about that. They're just taking you without your consent onto a ship and stealing your body parts like sperm, eggs to create their humanoids because they've ruined their own, in Reticula, they've ruined their own planet. So, that agenda's stopped as far as I know. I mean, they're very crafty. They come back through portals now because they were banned for this time space. But what happens if they come through a portal and are a same space but different time? It means that there was some intervention. I was talking a lot about the Vatican and how dark it is, and Luciferian, all this sort of thing, the connections, and they tend to actually go after people. And I've got a feeling they may have used an energy weapon, because the energy weapons, what they do is, there was a doctor who was found dead. He was talking about things going on with the Vatican and all this sort of thing, and his lungs were all melted together, and his heart, all his heart valves were melted together. And so they can actually direct the energy, a particular heart valve or something. And, I found my heart valve was bicuspal, not tricuspal. It didn't have 3 cusps on it. So probably they melted it together. And, I really feel that. Can I prove it? Of course I can't. But to have that happen so quickly, and of course, the doctors will say, oh, well, you were born like that. I don't think so. But anyway, the power starts changing back to the people. For example, this country, I'm hoping that, this administration that's coming in will give the power back to the states. And, they're going to reduce the government if they do what they say. It'll be an amazing country. and good to live in, abundance for everybody. But taking out these deep state people, it's so huge and so wide, and of course, they're just the puppets. Soros, Rockefellers, Rothschild, all these people, they're just puppets. The main guys in charge are under the planet, and they're going after them already. They've been given weapons to take care of them, because you can't just use a normal bullet. They can stop it mid-air. They have a very powerful mind that can stop a bullet in mid-flight and all this sort of thing. So you've got to use something else that they can't attenuate, stop, and it's being done at the moment. I mean, they're going in bunkers underground, pulling out, and this is where all the child stuff comes in. It's horrendous.
Become a member on Patreon to get full access to all exclusive content. A few of the perks is the full-length ad-free video version of the interviews, face-to-face interviews, bonus shows, and behind-the-scenes footage. You will also receive the video interview way in advance before the audio-only interview gets dropped on all platforms. Sign up and become a member today for only $3 a month. The link is in the description.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do a general healing. It covers a lot of things, not everything, but we do it twice a week, which is Thursday 5 p.m. Central Time and Saturday 11 a.m. Central Time. That's completely by donation. It's up to you. If you've got no money, I encourage you to come on, because it's going to help, especially during these times.
Exactly. And we're, one of the biggest, I guess, themes of this podcast, I cover everything. I'm like kind of like the uncensored Art Bell, or coast to coast, I guess.
Yay.
But so I cover it all. But I guess the biggest theme is we're under a spiritual attack. Whether you believe in God, religion, whatever. You can believe in the monkey man, whatever, but we're under some type of non-human force. You can call it entities, reptilians, whatever you want to call this force. I don't know. They're trying to keep us from our truest and highest potential, keeping us from developing, loving each other, raising our kids, our family, they're keeping us from having they're making us to where our children won't have a future, and keeping us from having that human experience. I think it's almost like an artificial construct that we live in, and they want to keep it like a dystopian Monsters Inc. energy draining system, to where we're so brain drained, and where we're feeding the system with our fear, energy, emotions, and everything, and it's building their society for them, or their future, their world, whatever it is. I don't know what's going on, but I guess kind of going off a tangent. But basically, we're under some type of attack. I think it's a spiritual battle, a spiritual war, to keep us from our truest and highest potential.
Absolutely. And it is, well, entities, or do you want to call them aliens? They're in a different dimension, but they can actually switch into this dimension, a lot of them. Especially, people have heard of the Anunnaki, you got the Draconians, you got the Luciferians. Oh, connected to the Vatican. That tells you everything you need to know about them. And you've also got other beings like first and second dimensional entities. It's interesting because during the healing sessions, I've found a lot of people are being really attacked by these entities now. They're in a different dimension, but their energy here, so they can attach to you. Like the Anunnaki Draconian, if they attach to you, they tend to sit in the abdomen, hang on the shoulders and neck, and they'll stay with you. They'll feed off your energy. So your abdomen gets paralyzed through energy. So you get digestive issues. Your liver drops in vibration. It doesn't process toxins, affects your adrenals. They don't work properly, so you get exhausted. Of course, your neck and shoulders, even though it's a spirit, it still affects your neck and shoulder. God, why is my neck so sore? And then it also, interestingly, taps in the lower back, and they send you negative thoughts. Like, if you go out to work, oh, the boss can't stand you, and no one likes you here. Why are you here? What's the point? And you just get these negative thoughts, but they're you thoughts. They come in as you are. If you recognize, you think, this is not my thought. This is external, and it's very important to remove these entities. And they're getting very much more aggressive nowadays. I've seen, where they're really scaring people. The people, oh yeah, I know about entities. I mean, I'm not a Christian, but if you look at Jesus' teaching, he talked about demonic entities. He lumped them all together, but there's different ones, and it's understanding how they work. Like for example, the Luciferians. When you remove them from someone's body, they can talk the body and they speak through your voice box in a snarly, raspy voice or start cackling, like an old witch type thing.
Kind of like the Exorcism movie.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I was at one expo. This girl had 50, it's the most I've ever seen, 57 Luciferians attached to her. And I got hold of them. I removed one and she started, and then I think relaxed. And then a cackly voice came, you didn't get rid of it. I said, oh, yes, I did. You're the next one. So, and the next one. And people were freaked out by it because this girl was contorting after the 57th. It had gone, but I've never seen so many entities attached to somebody as that girl, It was amazing. So they do
Oh,
mess
go
with
ahead.
you.
Go ahead, Christopher. I'm sorry, man.
They really mess with you, and they mess with your mind. They try and, force you into low vibrational state like depression, because you start to believe these thoughts that come in. They're not your thoughts. So I'd encourage everyone, really, if a thought comes in your head, people can't stand you, your boss is just about to fire you. Is that a you thought or is that an I thought? This is not my thoughts, and so again, we have prayers. Well, I don't like the word prayer. I like the word map of intent. But we've got a map of intent book, but which is basically you can use these things as instruments to remove these things, and send them back, So very important, I think.
Um, what exactly are these entity attachments? You can call them spirits, like archonic type parasites. Like what I mean is there a connection with the actual physical, like maybe the physical ETs or whatever aliens? Maybe somehow I don't know. How did they how did the physical is there a link between the two? Between maybe the malevolent ETs that are in the physical form and with the ones that are in the spirit form, these archon parasites, these entity attachments, or whatever. Is there a link and connection, almost like the ones that attach to us is almost like this evil spirit that was released with the physical ETs? You know what I mean? Like, is
Yeah,
there a
yeah.
link? Is there a link in connection with these forces?
Oh, yeah, they're one and the same. I mean, so let's look at the malevolent beings. So, let's go through them again. Anunnaki, Draconian, you've got Luciferian, you've got Archons. The Archon agenda is to do with the jibber jabber stuff that's happening. We can talk about that later if you want. And then obviously snake beings, but they're the four main ones. And then you've got the grey reticular. They were taken off the planet, I think it was in 2017, because I chair the Galactic Federation with two other Melchizedek beings. And it was decided to remove them because, when you come to planet Earth, they show you like, oh, you got these entities, they can attach to you and things like this. Is that a violation or is that an education? It's an education because before you came here, you knew about it and you got to learn how to manage them when you get down here. But if a race come here and start abducting people because your government signed a contract to say you could, is that a violation of education? That's a violation because, you weren't told about that. They're just taking you without your consent onto a ship and stealing your body parts like sperm, eggs to create their humanoids because they've ruined their own, in reticular, they've ruined their own planet. So, that agenda's stopped as far as I know. I mean, they're very crafty. They come back through portals now because they were banned for this time space. But what happens if they come through a portal and are a different, same space but different time? They've then got over the ban, which is another story. So yeah, all these beings, especially the reptilian Anunnaki and the Draconians, they can switch dimensions. They can come into this dimension and be physical. Now, I remember a very well-known kind of radio host. he came to me. He said, I don't understand it. He said, when my wife gets angry, she was very slight, and he was a really big guy. I'm 6'5", and he was like 6 foot whatever. He said, I don't understand that when she gets angry, she can throw me across the room 20 feet.
Mm.
And I said, it's not her, it's the attachment she's got. And what they can do is, very quickly, if you're having an argument, you're not focusing on the person. And suddenly, when you're not, focusing on the person, what they can do is switch in this dimension for a quarter of a second. They're huge beings. They're like 10'7" tall. They grab you, throw you, and then they switch out again. And you're looking back thinking, how did that person like pick me up and throw me like a rag doll? And the answer is, it wasn't them. It's the entity that's attached them. And they
And
also
those
influence
entities
people.
and those entities don't have the same. They're not bound by the same laws of physics and all that as we are. Also.
No, no, they can switch dimensions. They can shift into this dimension. And that's why, there are shapeshifters walking amongst us who look kind of human. But if you look very closely, you can always tell. I mean, the reptilian eyes, the slits come in their eyes periodically. We've all seen pictures of that. But also, if you look at the face, if you compare their face each time, it's never the same. Like, if they have a pimple on the right cheek or something, you'll find it might be further up or on the left, or they never they never can get their true form. So yeah.
Are we just purely well, before I ask you this, I want you just mentioned a while ago, with you doing healings and things like that, or some would call it exorcisms, whatever, or releasing entities from individuals. Um, do you think years of doing that? I'm not saying that, even Tom Brady and Drew Brees threw interceptions, as good at quarterbacks as they were. With you, you might be good at doing what you're doing, but do you think just years of just doing that and doing that, like, do you think put a it affected you maybe with your health some? Because you told me a little bit before the show what happened with a few months ago. Just because, like I said, even Tom Brady can throw interceptions, but just years of abuse. I wouldn't say abuse, but that going through those traumatic healing sessions and things with the ones that are really, really deep and dark. Do you think that maybe it played a factor on some of your health?
Well, I think it can do because what they can do is use energy weapons against you. And like we were talking on the show, I mean, before this happened, 8 weeks ago, I had open heart surgery. So, and I'm doing really good. I was dying before, and now I'm doing amazing,
It's
just
crazy. It was only
replacing a
8 weeks
heart
ago,
valve.
though. Only eight
I
weeks
know,
ago.
yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So, even the scar, I mean, if you look at the scar, I'm not going to show the whole thing, but, it's healing great. I'm doing great. But what happened is it came upon me so fast. I put 80 pounds worth of water on. I had a belly, blew out, and everything else. It's gone now, but it means that there was some intervention. I was talking a lot about the Vatican and how dark it is, and Luciferian, all this sort of thing, the connections, and they tend to actually go after people. And I've got a feeling they may have used an energy weapon because the energy weapons, what they do is there was a doctor who's found dead. He was talking about things going on with the Vatican and all this sort of thing, and his lungs were all melted together, and his heart, all his heart valves were melted together. And so they can actually direct the energy, a particular heart valve or something. And, I found my heart valve was bicuspal, not tricuspal. It didn't have three cusps on it. So probably they melted it together. And, I really feel that. Can I prove it? Of course I can't. But to have that happen so quickly, and of course, the doctors will say, "Oh, well, you were born like that." I don't think so, but anyway, so it's very interesting. So you do get attacked, and unfortunately, we do psychic surgery. We do, we heal people's cancers, cystic fibrosis, blood sugar issues, all sorts of things. And I said to the Melchizedek beings, so I was born as one. I was talking to the Melchizedek being saying, "Look, can we heal this?" They said, "You don't have time. It's going to take you 4 or 5 months to reform this valve, and you don't have that time. You need to go and get the surgery." So, okay, so I did it. Sometimes you have to allow the third dimensional intervention. If it's a serious thing, which is which I was sad about, but that's okay. You know, I'm still here. So,
That's awesome, man. It really is. It's crazy how you're just sitting here. I figured, whenever your assistant, I was communicating with her that said that you're ready to go. I'm like, huh? Already?
yeah,
I'm like, what?
yeah, I'm doing it. I've lost
Well,
80 pounds.
I said, what
8 weeks,
the?
I've lost 80 pounds of water. I mean, honestly, I remember one night I was taking Lasix and I got up every half hour. I was going for a pee and I'd lost 10 pounds in one night of water. It's just nuts, you know.
Man.
But you look back on it, it seems like a dream, but it was serious, I mean, I felt before I had the surgery, I felt my life force starting to fade. And, I asked them because they're being how long have we got to live? They go about 8 weeks. So, luckily the surgeon very quickly intervened, got us in and it's done. So,
So you talk about the Vatican and, the energy weapons. So makes me wonder if, is that an actual weapon or is it more of and let me add on to what I'm about to say too, but is it like an actual weapon or is it more like a psychic type weapon? Because what I'm saying is I've mentioned this a few other times and people that listen to me all the time, every podcast, they may get tired of me saying it, but I have new listeners all the time. Um 2022, going through a dark spell, lost people, and doing this podcast, covering some dark material, it doesn't help whenever you have deaths in the family, crazy things going on in life. You have the world seems it's on the brink of destruction. You just 2000 we just finally got pregnant in 2022, I think. Yeah.
yay.
We had to do IVF. My wife, because we were up there in age, we tried for a long time. Um, but anyways, going through a dark spell, and fast forward, and lost my dog, and it's anyways. I made a meme. I created a meme of not George Soros, Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum guy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and I put a Joker face over. I was gonna put it on Twitter. I put a painted. It was like a transparent painted Joker face over his face and say, "Obey the economic," something like that. Um, in the process of making that, and I just felt uneasy, and I the most once I got done with it, I had this sensation of doom, fear. I'm talking about I never felt that from just making a meme, making a little joke. Well, it's not really a joke, but because it's serious, but but this constant perpetual state of terror. And
Mm.
I messaged my Facebook page manager. He lives in the UK, and I said, dude, what do you think of this, man? Why am I feeling like this? Should I post this? Like I was literally, I don't do drugs. I'll have a beer every now and then, but I don't, like I'm totally. But anyways, he's I went ahead and posted it. Nothing happened, but I guess the long story short, it's just hard to wrap my head around how I felt. So I'm trying to explain it to you, and I don't know how to explain it. Just doom, terror, fear, all that. Did he or does he have these entity attachments, these dark, demonic,
Oh, yeah.
satanic, Luciferian attack, whatever? And it's almost like they're his marching soldiers, or maybe he's the pawn, he's the puppet, and these entities are the puppet masters. I don't know, whatever, either
No,
or, doesn't
correct.
matter.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they knew Michael
Yeah.
James is about to create this meme. Let's go to tackle him now.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to explain it. And it's almost like when I was in the middle of that, because I was going through all this traumatic stuff in my personal life, maybe like he sent out this demonic psychic army to me or whatever. And since I had things going on in my personal life, I forgot to close that window in my subconscious mind and allow me to be attacked like that. What's your thoughts on
Yeah.
all that, Christopher.
No, they ride in on emotion for sure. So when you're at a low ebb, and we all get low ebbs. I mean, I'm sure everyone listening must be kind of fed up with this world at the moment, because it's a hard place to live. And I want to go there because I want to explain a bit of how to live and get out the matrix completely. But if you're taking emotion on, these things ride in on emotion, and of course they're all connected. So like you say, Soros, uh, Schwab,
Yeah,
all these
yeah.
people, Schwab, they're all connected. They're all reptilian creatures, and if they see something, but don't forget they're the puppets. You're absolutely right about that. It's like all the presidents. They're puppets. The big guys are the reptilians underneath the planet. Which is the draconians, Anunnaki. They've also got a base of the Greys, and it's interesting because Luciferians, of course, as well. Their agenda is to take over this planet. They don't want us here particularly. We're just cattle food to them. So that's why it's a massive spiritual battle. That's why people like Gates is trying to block out the sun, because he doesn't want plants to grow so much, but he also wants to reduce the oxygen, because the oxygen content inside the planet is not as high as here, so they can't live up here at the moment. So that's why all these agendas going on.
And I do want to talk about a little bit, just laying some groundwork a little bit, but I do want to talk about how to break free from this artificial construct that we live in. You know,
Oh yeah,
um,
that's the
eh,
positive bit. We're doing it.
it is, it is. But you talking about food? Do you think that we purely are just food for these parasitic entities? Because the food they lust after is our energy. Our energy acts like a cosmic toolbox for these guys. If we just said no, quit buying into their fear propaganda, and quit being their mind controlled puppets, their entire manufactured parasitic energy leeching paradigm and this reality would crumble and change overnight.
Yeah, absolutely. And if the consciousness of the planet changed, I mean, we affect the consciousness down here. So if we all woke up and got a high vibrational state, and really positive, and didn't allow these things, they wouldn't be able to live here. And that's one of the keys actually about the planet, is if you got to the 5D vibration, they can't live in that high vibration. The highest vibration they can live is 4D, which is the dumping ground of humanity's, kind of anxiety and anger and everything else. So once we've gone through that to the 5D area, the vibration's too high. They can't live in it. They won't be here, not in that frequency and time space. So yeah,
If somebody believes they have something negative attached to them, I meant to ask this a while ago before I told you my little what happened a couple of years ago. But if they believe they have something attached to them, rather a spirit, entity, something else, what what's the best practice? What's the best course they can go to your website and it'll be the link. But what's
yeah,
the
just go to the website, and if you want a one-to-one, we do special. So we do one-to-one sessions, specialized groups, but then we do these, the general healing sessions where you can just sign up, and we remove any entities on that, and we work on cancers, we work on all sorts of things, intestinal issues. So many people have got so many issues, and most illness is caused by emotion, and take a few examples. Why do people get cancer? Well, if they've got pathogens in their body like Epstein-Barr or herpes simplex, something else, in a high vibrational body, they're not active. But when you get emotion, say you get emotion, it bleeds into the woman's breast, or it bleeds into the womb, or it bleeds into the prostate. It bleeds, depending on what the emotion is, it affects different areas of the body. And so when the vibration drops, the pathogens mutate the cells, turn into tumor. So when people say, "Oh, I've got cancer," they think it's a death wish. It's not. A cancer tumor is just saying, "Hey, body's off balance. You better pay attention to me, or I will pay attention to you." And I've seen it. I've seen miracles, people getting out of cancers, by releasing the emotion, the primary cause, and getting rid of the pathogens. So all these things, even with, for example, digestive issues, I'm seeing at the moment pancreatic enzymes are on decline. Why is that? Because emotion bleeds into the pancreas. The enzymes aren't produced, so you're not digesting your food properly. Plus, if you've got an entity stuck down here, what's it going to do to your intestines down here? It's going to lower their vibration. So when you eat, the food gets further down, it backs up, you feel blur. A lot of people feel, oh, and it's because you've got an entity attachment. Ferments in the wrong place, so you're not absorbing nutrients, burns holes in the intestinal lining called leaky gut, gets worse, becomes pockets in the intestinal lining called diverticulitis. So all these things, most of the things, obviously, if you get poisoned or something else, that's different. But most illnesses are caused primarily by emotion. So it's kind of crazy. That's why they attack people. That's why they want you in fear, because you're good fodder for them. They can feed off that loosh of energy. Plus, they know that you're going to start being sick, and of course, all the reptilian agenda with big pharma and big agriculture and big this and that. They get fed money by people being sick.
I'm glad you brought that up, Christopher, because I know you, so many other people talked about what I'm about to say, but also Dr. Stella Emanuel has discussed how these entities can cause all sorts of physical and reproductive issues like fibroids, miscarriages, and infertility. How exactly do they accomplish this, Christopher? Like, how can these disembodied spirits or entities or whatever influence have a that certain level of influence over someone's physical body and autonomy? Have these entities learned over the millennia how to hack one's genetic makeup and code to be able to do this?
No, they're just attached and they can move around. So if, again, think about a lady's womb. If you've got an entity over it, it lowers the vibration. Again, if you look at pathogens, most people have things like Epstein-Barr, it's rampant. It's all manufactured. Pathogens and stealth pathogens like Burley Lyme, HIV, AIDS, Agent Orange, all manufactured. And so if you get pathogens, they're very robust. They're helical bacterial, structures. They're very robust. They take a lot to get rid of. And, we have a solution to get rid of the stuff. I want to explain that later if I can. But if you've got an empty and they move around, so they sit over the lady's womb, lowers the vibration, you've got pathogens in there. What happens? Oh, mutates the cells, turn into tumor. To me, fibroids are tumors, so you shouldn't have fibroids in your womb. It also, for example, endometriosis, split in the womb lining. Why does it split? Well, the pathogens swell it, and so it starts to separate from the womb, so all these things that can be caused by entities or emotion or both.
My wife has had several. That's why that was one of the main reasons we had to get those removed. Why it just took so long for us to get, you know, have a child, have a baby. But um, and man, one of hers was like, I forgot, it was like 10, 12 millimeters long, or it was the size of a 2 or 3 year old's fist. Like
Yeah.
it was huge. But um, to move forward just a little bit, Christopher, if the positive extraterrestrial interdimensional entities are, if they're truly here, I guess, to assist and guide humanity towards, a higher state of consciousness and awareness, because, we're definitely in this dark place as a collective here in the world and society. Why have they, I know you've been asked this, but I want to know, I'm sure other people want to know your opinion, but why haven't they not openly revealed themselves to the masses and put an end to this deception and manipulation that's perpetrated, you know, over the minds, hearts, and the sovereignty of man here on earth?
Well, one of the interesting things is that it goes back to star seeds. So there's certain keys of the universe which they can't disobey, and that is free will. So we have free will down here. So for the normal humanity down here, they go about their business, they go to work, pay taxes, pay property tax, do this, do that, and they think it's all okay. Um, but when star seeds are born, what are star seeds? Well, they're people who've been spliced at birth. I was spliced at birth, so my body's a bit different. My heart's really huge. It's the size of a volleyball, and this surgeon goes, "Oh my God, that's huge," Um, and which does matter. And I think it's big because of the amount of work I do and the amount of emotion you take in. You can then process it and get rid of it without affecting your heart. But of course, it's been affected by this energy one. But I think, um, the 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 agenda. Well, I don't know. I've lost track now. Sorry.
Well,
Where were?
basically, the why haven't the good guys intervened?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So go back to the keys of Enoch, the keys of the universe. Enoch was a Melchizedek being also. He learned to publish the keys of the universe, and there's about 70 of them. Like, you can't interfere without somebody asking down here. Now, they can't just come and fly in and, because they'd be violating the keys of the universe, like free will and all this sort of thing. So to get around it, what they've done is see down here, and it's basically through abduction. People have come down here, agreed to be abducted, and spliced in at birth starseed people from Palladians, Arcturians, Lumerians, Atlantarians, Andromedans. There's 5 Melchizedek beings here, of which I'm one. And there's there's loads and loads, like probably, I don't know, several million star seeds, and they're here to be able to pull help from the ethers down here by understanding this is not okay, because they're born, they're very different. They're evolved beings. They volunteer to come down here, as opposed to, oh, I'm coming down here because I want to spiritually grow. And this is an extreme classroom, of course. So I always tell everyone, look, if God ever says you're up there, and, oh, we want volunteers for planet Earth, run to the restroom, pretend you've got diarrhea, lock the door, and don't come out until all the volunteers are. No, but I love it. Honestly, like, I love it down here. I think it's amazing. I haven't always loved it. When I went bankrupt in 2007, I was at my absolute lowest, didn't have any money for food or anything else. But, going back to, why are they helping? They're helping a lot, an awful lot. We're doing a pyramid project, which is huge, huge pyramids. Why are we doing that? Well, it's going to be sited somewhere on the planet. We need about 100,000 acres, and the Arcturians are building it in the 12th dimension. They're going to switch it here in time space. One of them's about 1,000 feet tall. The other one's 600 odd feet tall, and the other one's 300 odd feet tall. And they're very different than the pyramids what they're here before. Why are we doing that? Because they're going to be set on ley lines. So in the Fibonacci curve, smallest one, next one, biggest one will be on the ley line to inject energy to really help blow out all the satanic symbology that's been created on the ley lines. So they are helping a lot. It's just that you don't see them. Why don't you see them? Because they're not allowed to show themselves yet. They want people, I think, to get used to the fact that there is life, beyond this planet. I mean, if I asked my father, who's 90, I mean, even when he was 10 years younger, I said, oh, there's aliens on other planets. No, there's not, there's just us here. Oh, okay. So you're telling me an infinite universe, and you've got the ego to say there's only us here. You got to be kidding. There's beings on so many planets. It's unbelievable. But these aliens, the benevolent ones are all here to help, and they are helping. The malevolent ones are trying to push back and take over the planet because it's got so much abundance,
Is that
compared with other planets.
is that why it's hard for things to get better or to get better overnight? Because it's almost like this malevolent dark force, it's almost like this is their domain, or they're claiming this is their domain, and maybe they have a bigger army here. I don't know at the moment, and maybe that's the reason why we're going through this trial by fire moment as a civilization. But I've also mentioned before, I think we need that trial by fire moment. This darkness that we're in, just like we need darkness to be able to sleep, to reboot our brains, our minds.
Yeah, yeah.
We can't just live in the sunlight, the light all the time.
Yeah.
We need that balance, that happy balance, that yin yang effect, you know. Um, but I think this is like the modern day dark ages that we're in.
Oh, it's
Uh,
huge. Yeah.
but how long do you foresee us being in this trial by fire dark age moment that we're in before things will get better?
I think things will start improving next year, but I don't think it's going to go. I mean, there's a lot to do, and if things start changing in the world, the power starts changing back to the people. For example, this country, I'm hoping that this administration that's coming in will give the power back to the states, and they're going to reduce the government if they do what they say. It'll be an amazing country and good to live in, abundance for everybody. But taking out these deep state people, it's so huge and so wide. And of course, they're just the puppets, Soros, Rockefellers, Rothschild, all these people, they're just puppets. The main guys in charge are under the planet, and they're going after them already. They've been given weapons to take care of them because you can't just use a normal bullet. They can stop it midair. They have a very powerful mind that can stop a bullet in mid-flight and all this sort of thing. So you've got to use something else that they can't attenuate, stop, and it's being done at the moment. I mean, they're going in bunkers underground, pulling out, and this is where all the child stuff comes in. It's horrendous, but people just don't see it. And of course, if you talk about it, and that's the problem. I think a lot of these people who are listening probably think, well, who do I talk to it about? We've got friends who are quite awake, but in different areas. Like we've got one friend who really gets what's going on in the governmental system, the child trafficking, everything else. But when you talk about entities, scare the pants off her. And then other people, they talk about the entities, but they don't know about the governmental system. They think, oh, the government's for me. Well, it's not, but that's okay. I mean, I've had people say, look, there must be something that's not manipulated on this planet. I'm thinking, now let me think. Oh, that'll be everything. The
It's weird.
air,
It's
the
weird.
food,
It's weird
everything.
it's weird how you mentioned that because the past every people claim to be awakened since 2020. We have so many people. Yes, they probably to a degree, but that's it boils down to what is it? Sematics, whatever the.
Yeah,
But what is awakened? Because yes, people may seem awakened, but I see more people that are quote unquote awakened to left right politics. They're
yeah.
not awakened to the whole shebang, to entity attachments, this dark force, what's going on in the underground world, all of that. I think the true definition, that's my opinion. This is my opinion, of course, but true awakened individual is somebody that's open minded to all of this, to all the mysteries of the universe and what's here, not just of left right paradigm politics.
Absolutely. And yeah. I mean, what level, like you say, everyone's narrative or definition of awakened is different. To me, awaken is when you're right there. You've released all your emotion. You don't get triggered. You're in a really peaceful place. You're
That too.
surrendered
Yeah.
to, in quotes, God, whatever you call God, prime creator, doesn't matter. You're surrendered knowing God's got your back. And I mean, God had my back, going to this hospital and the things that happened was all lined up. It was amazing. So God's always got your back. And, surrender also is like people say, well, how the hell do you make a living doing healings? Well, God's got my back. I don't have to worry about it. As long as you've got food on the table and you've got a roof over your head, what more do you need? But awakened is also having no fear of death either. I mean, if I pass away, you're up there having champagne with God. You did it. You did the lifetime. Congratulations. And you're having fun. You come down here, you think, oh my goodness. But I just want to look at that point, if I may.
Go ahead.
And I see it a lot, and I'm just letting you guys know that we have a heart sharing circle on a Friday. So people are very lonely because, when you become properly awakened, I'm talking about really up there, the more you get, the less friends you have because they think, oh, you're a wacko, conspiracy theory, and up the wazoo and everything else. So they can't talk to anybody about what they feel, what they see, and their spiritual journey. It's very hard. It's a very lonely journey. I mean, we have very few friends. We've got thousands. When I went to hospital, I got over about 800 emails from our clients to say, "Oh my God, you've done so much for humanity," and sending love. And they they set up a Zoom thing where when I was in surgery, they were doing meditation and the power of maps of intent, or in quotes prayer. And it overwhelmed me. It was a lesson for me to accept love, because you do so much for others, you don't think about yourself. And suddenly, I'm in a vulnerable position. And it brought me to tears that, wow, there's so many people who really get so much out of what I'm doing and love us for what you do. It was humbling. It really was. It was amazing. But I think, to operate in this matrix, you have to, I believe, is detach from it. Um, we don't go out very much. I don't know about you guys, but, I don't like going to restaurants. I feel the energies. I can see entities. I have the ability to see entities. I don't want to go in restaurants and see attachments and all this sort of thing. I can shut them off, but it doesn't shut off the energy there, And when I'm in, like, sometimes we go to a place called the Poorhouse in Hollister, just outside Branson, just have a beer, and I'm there about 3/4 of an hour that I've got to go, and then we come back to our house. Our house is based on 40 acres of woodland, and it's got a house in the middle of it. So we're surrounded by woods, which means that you're kind of custard, you don't really feel the energies outside because these trees absorb energy, So if you come back and you're angsty, 15 minutes, you just, oh, wow, you can feel the energy leave. It's amazing. So I think, you have to operate your life in the best way. Do things that make you feel, find one thing that is going to give you joy that day. Whatever it is, like cooking a beautiful dinner, going for a walk in the woods, getting in nature, growing your own vegetables, whatever you like doing, playing music. We love playing music. Just find something that will really excite you that day, and get friends around you who don't berate you, who love you for who you are. And we have, like I say, very few, but we do have a small crowd of people, and and they're great. And they don't judge you for what you are. I remember going out with some. There was a Southern Baptist couple. Can we have dinner? Yeah, okay. So we went out for dinner. We're sitting there. Well, what do you do for a living? I thought, oh no. So, oh no. So
Yeah.
they said, well, I do healing. Is it in the name of the Lord? I said, well, kind of. Then I thought, oh, forget it. Let's tell them how it works. Put them in portals, remove entities. Told them the whole thing. They got the fluoride stare. It's funny, they never invite us out again. So it was hilarious. You get this fluoride stare, like, oh, this guy's a wacko. That's okay. I love being a wacko.
My
I
family.
think I'm normal. In
Oh
fact,
man,
but it's just crazy.
my family doesn't even know what I do, like with podcast. Well, I've mentioned it briefly in the past, about things, and I try to. It's almost like you have to dumb down certain things. Like, let's say, last night we're over at my parents' house. We always do Thanksgiving on the weekend after Thanksgiving at my parents' house. We always have several of them. So we was watching football and all of that. Um, and so I showed them videos. I've shown it on my podcast before of two orbs. I've only captured two different times on my security footage in my house. These two orbs, and they set off the motion detectors. You know, and bugs don't on the technologies. The bugs don't set off motion detectors. But
No.
anyways, and one went from the over the garage camera, and it set off that motion detector, and it just floated, and then it went to the one that's to the other one continuous motion, then it set off the motion detector and picked up the orb, the one that's shining on that's pointed at the door, the front door. So
Yeah.
one continuous motion. And would you think that my father still just did not believe like somebody shining a light on that or something. Like that has to be. It could be. They even said my grandfather was there also. Grandfather and my father. And my grandfather said it could. What about a drone? It could be a drone. Or they could
No, no,
not.
no.
That they can't. Uh, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah.
if they can't understand that that could be a spirit or something, it could be a good one. I actually probably think it is because um an angel, whatever you want to call it. Because we have several people, like when I told you we went through some dark spells, my family, especially me, a couple years ago. Lost a bunch of people. We have people that we lost recently that didn't get to meet my baby girl. So
Oh,
maybe and that one that went this where it did the continuous motion, the camera that shines at the door, that orb went over there to my daughter's room. So I don't know. But anyways, long story short, they won't even fathom the possibility that it could be a spirit. And they're
no.
Christians. You know what I mean? Like, but they won't even fathom the possibility that it could be a spirit, an angel, or anything. But so I'm not going to say, yeah, I think the government's working with entities and they have these entity attachments. They could have these archonic type parasites latched into their subconscious minds and they're being used like puppet masters to on the global stage to turn us into a dystopian type world. I'm not going to talk like that. You know what I mean? I can't
No,
talk
no,
like
no.
that. I can't talk
No.
like that because they will disown me, or try to lock me up in a. Um, that's what I love about my wife because she's not into really all this, but she's open minded. She lets me do what I want to do, and she doesn't judge. You know what I mean? She lets me do what I want to do, and she has questions, and But I firmly believe I forgot who said it. When you can't overwhelm people because people have their own levels of awakening. Not just awakening to the left, right BS politics. Like understand what's going on with that. It's so much deeper than that.
Oh,
But
it is, yeah.
whenever the student's ready, the teacher will come. Everybody has their own levels of awakening. You can't just overwhelm somebody because they will have a
They'll shut down,
yeah,
It becomes, oh no, conspiracy theory, or something. I
but
remember I phoned my
go ahead.
father once and he it was really funny. He said, well, we've got a bigger problem as well. So what's that, Dad? He goes, global warming. I said, oh, is it? I said, what's causing that? He goes, cows passing wind. I said, so you're telling me cows farting is creating global warming? He goes, yeah. I said, where do you hear that? The BBC. I said, oh, yeah, that's the BBC who just got $60 million or something from Bill Gates. Oh, okay. I'm understanding now. I said, anyway, we solved it in America. He goes, how did you solve it? I said, well, we gave him tum-tums, settle the stomach, no farting, good to go. He goes, oh my God, that's amazing. So it's just, there's no change in people, even with Jesus, he's got a thing about Jesus and he said to me one day, you don't believe in Jesus, do you? I said, actually, I do. I said, his teachings are amazing. Don't judge people, love people, take care of people. That's all he taught. It's very simple. It's just simple. You don't need all this stuff in the Bible, and if you abide your life by that, I never judge anybody. All my prayers the Melchizedek prayers that we've got, is not for us to judge them, send them back to God with unconditional love and forgiveness. So it's non-judgmental, Um, and I think that's really important. So he goes, yeah, but you don't believe he's the Son of God? I said, well, of course he's the Son of God, but so are you. And so am I. Yeah, but he's the Son of God. Oh, so you're saying God's got this hierarchy structure now, or something, and I didn't get promoted, I guess. Well, I don't know what to tell you, but it's funny, the way they view things, and there's no change in their mind.
And also, he's Jesus. What did he say? Oh man, I got a brain for it. Don't you know that what I can do, you can do and better? You
Yeah,
know,
he said, yeah, exactly. But if you think about Jesus, I mean, if he was a carpenter, he certainly did healing and taught people how to live, no judgment and everything else. But I think was he good at cooking? Who knows? Probably not. So everyone's got a skill. And this is what I encourage people. Everyone's got a gift. I love cooking. Am I good at it? Well, yeah, but I need a recipe. So I'm not like some chef who'll have three things and you put them together, just taste absolutely amazing. I have to have a recipe. But I think everyone should look at their God gift, whatever that is, healing, growing plants, being in nature, looking after animals. There's so many different gifts you can have, and if you pursue them, people say, "Well, how am I going to make a living out of that?" Don't worry about it. Just surrender to God, and you'll always have enough. You'll always have enough. I was in corporate systems. I worked for Marconi. I worked on flight control systems. I worked on a lot of different things, which some of them I regret because they were fighter aircraft and different things. When I was younger, about a couple of weeks ago, you're supposed to laugh, but
A couple weeks ago,
yeah, a couple of weeks ago, yeah, I dyed the hair since. So but I think it makes you realize that surrender. I've got such a great life now. I love what I do, and got so many clients who get benefit from it. It's just important. But one of the things I wanted to go back to is the orbs. Actually, orbs are definitely angelic. On this property, one night we were. So this is a house here, but further down, I mean, it's 40 acres, but further down, we've got like big fire pit. And we were sitting there, having a beer and nice big fire and cooking stuff on the fire. And a fairy being about this big, it was bright green. Everyone saw it. It started from one end, went right down the path, and then disappeared.
wow.
A fairy being. There's portals here. We're seeing, we've had sightings of Bigfoot and different things. It's an amazing place, and the energy of it's incredible. So I'm glad we managed to finish this house and get here. It's a sanctuary, I think.
It comes from the top right.
Oh yeah,
And you'll see a bug fly by here in a minute. But this thing set off the motion detector. This was early
that's
morning.
amazing.
See the
Oh yeah,
bug that went by? Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
they don't set off the. And then, see, there's another bug right there. They do not. Those things, if they set off the motion detectors, would be get notifications all the time.
oh
So
yeah.
that's the first one. Then 3 days later, go ahead and show you the other one.
That's amazing. That's definitely angelic because
And
it's a
then
good energy.
this one was 3 days later. This is the one that continues from over the garage to the other camera, one consecutive footage. It's going to be on the bottom right.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. Isn't it?
Look at that thing.
That's good footage, actually.
I know. I need to adjust the This is just raw. I haven't adjusted the contrast or anything.
Yeah, yeah,
And then see where it's going? It's going to my other camera over there on the side.
yeah.
I'm going to show you that one. This is truly remarkable how it captured on both cameras, and
It is.
people still just show levels of cognitive dissonance.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and here is that the continuation of the one I just showed you. That's the front door, and the right over there is my daughter's room.
Oh, there you go. That's amazing.
It's
That's
almost like it
absolutely amazing.
has. It's almost like it has some type of intelligence the way it's moving. You know.
Oh, it does, yeah. Well, they can actually compress themselves as just into an energy ball, but orbs are like beings, so for sure, just in from a different dimension. So that's amazing.
What so most orbs do you think that they are benevolent beings, angelic beings,
I do, yeah, most
can they
orbs.
or can they be a mixture?
You can get dark orbs. I've seen one or two, but most of them are benevolent. They're here to help, and I think sometimes they show up. The problem with most people, again, the universal rules are that, if the person's not ready, like, if you get a apparition like Mother Mary comes into your room and stands at the foot of your bed, you're sort of like, oh my God, most people freak out. Now, I've talked to Mother Mary because she's the mother of the Melchizedek beings down here. So, and it doesn't bother me. I've had beings come in the room and, it doesn't bother me. What bothers me is actually when I was 4, I had a big old Anunnaki came in my room when I was 4, it was 10 foot 7 tall, standing in the corner. Oh, Dad, there's a reptilian. Well, I called it a dinosaur thing, and in the corner of the room comes running in. Where? Um, oh, it's a bad dream, darling. Go back. Anyway, I lay down, and the thing was still there, and it was. The thing is about these beings, the malevolent ones. They're dark, and you can feel that dark feeling in your chest, like, wow, this is not good. And I remember just shouting out as a kid, like, get out of my room. It went, because that's the universal rule. So, and I put all my might into it. So I learned how to deal with those on an early age. But the lighter ones, for sure, they tend to show themselves as orbs because it doesn't frighten people so much. So, if you asked it to show yourself in your form, it will probably show itself and reform itself.
What are the what's the agenda, purpose, the goal of these dark forces, the grays or entities, whatever? Um, is it to try to, and even it boils down to maybe some of the abductions that go on, with them creating hybrids or whatever. What's the ultimate end game? Is it to try to have a human experience to learn what makes us tick, what's in us? Do they want to try to capture our soul, our essence, our spirit? Some people say that that's not possible. Okay, let's say it's not possible. Are they trying to create a copy? Like I can make a copy of a file on my computer and drag it to my SD card. It's not the original file, but it's a copy. Like, what are they trying to do? What's the ultimate goal for some of these things that's going on? Rather it be abductions, hybrids, the genetic experiments, deep underground, whatever's going on. What makes us fascinating to them? I know we're an energy source. I know that, but why are they doing these experiments? And why are we drawn to them? Is it because of the soul, the spirit, the life force that they do not have, that maybe some of these factions, these dark factions, I'm not saying all, are trying to achieve and trying to maybe create some type of copy or trying to hack that genetic life within us, that soul essence within us?
Yeah, I mean, they want to try and copy your soul. They can't, it's too complex. They'd never copy your soul. They could probably make an AI copy, which is very reduced and wouldn't be you at all. But of course, genetically, they can make you look the same. So, there's over 65% of the population on this planet now is probably non-player characters. And people say, oh, yeah, whatever. Well, let's look at the population in the last 500 years. So the 1500s, it was 438 million. So think about that, 438, 1600, it went up to 500 million. That's 50 million bigger. And don't forget, the average, so they say, is 2.2 kids. Now it's gone down even more, apparently, so to 1.8 or 1.92. So 1600 to 1700, 610 million. That's almost doubled. And then 17 to 1800, 1 billion. Now, here's where it gets interesting. 1800 to 1900, 1.6 billion. 1900 to 2000, 6.144 billion. And you're kind of thinking, that's a big difference. And then 24 years later, it's gone up to 8.7 billion. The figures don't make sense. That's not a natural evolution. Something, they've got to be creating millions of bots, underground, in pods. And, I always remind everyone that, if you want a proper human being, like a proper human being, you need a woman's womb with the God energy. Your fertilized egg becomes a fetus. You've got 3 months to get the soul in. And you get a proper human soul coming through. if you try and bear them in plastic pods, you don't have the energy, so you don't get a human soul. You get an AI version, which they implant, and that's why these people are fairly shut down. So it's a biological, you know, AI person, basically, non-player character. So
Is that why do you think certain factions are trying are possibly physically or psychically through some type of attachment working with certain elites, certain global elites on the global stage to try to push towards this AI digital dystopian transhuman type world? Because if we go to that type of future, that type of world, it will make these darker forces be able to come through more easily to where we can be more hackable. Because if we merge with the machines, or
oh yeah,
even the Neuralink, like Elon Musk, where everything's just automated and everything, to where we have a internet within our brain, where we're basically plugged in like the Matrix. Um, maybe that makes it more. Maybe that's the reason why. Maybe they are grooming some of the global elites to go towards that type of future, so that it's almost like game over for humanity when it comes to our
oh yeah,
sovereignty and our free will and everything. And I think it can make us hackable. And if they can hack within us, there's no telling what can, would everybody be NPCs, instead of having to try to create them or whatever.
oh yeah, and they can reduce the population and do what they like because they can program your brain and make you think in a different way. And I mean, I don't like AI. I'd never use it. It's not because I'm old-fashioned. I just don't need to be told what to do. I like to write my own things. Even though I've got dyslexia. You might say, well, how come you've written 6 books? Well, I had to have a ghostwriter and basically put a headset on and dictate it, because I tried everything. And I find writing books, if you really want to write a good book, you need to almost like have your eyes closed and almost like channel it. So I was basically channeling and in that way, and then, the person on the other end would say, what do you mean by this? And so you expand on that and expand on that. I'm not good at writing books, and that's why we've got a ghostwriter to interface what I've got to the outside world and drag the information out of me. Otherwise, these things would have happened. So, but it's interesting. I think, yeah, Neuralink and all these things, it makes you hackable, completely hackable. And what happens if you get like a blip, in the system? You get a virus or something, it could send everyone insane. So because this Neuralink is completely attached to the brain, so it's going to alter your way of thinking. It can alter everything. But even the nanotech, that people have been ingesting of since 2019, that also gets in the brain, and that also has consciousness. People don't realize these 10⁻⁹ small particles. They have nanotubes and nanospheres. Nanotubes are basically they have a CMOS array inside them. They also have binding with things like plant material, nylons, polymers, so they can grow in the body. So they actually mutate. They grow through the body. The spheres are actually loaded with 92 viruses, so they're triggered 92 different frequencies. So if they want to trigger a virus and you press a button, 5G sends out the signal and one virus comes out. So all this stuff, makes people transhuman. And, a lot of people have nanotech in them, but if your DNA is robust against it, it will not replicate. Everyone's got particles with them. It's in the chemtrails. It's in what came in 2019. We all know about that. And but it doesn't necessarily turn to Morgellons like replicating the body. It only replicates if your DNA is damaged. How would you damage the DNA? Well, the old way was agrobacterium. It's in GMO foods, and it's in old, jibby jabby things. The new way is CRISPR technology, and that splices the genetics and the chromosomes. So basically, when you do that, your body is not compatible with your soul because your DNA is altered. And so the soul lifts out of the body about 2 inches on an umbilical cord and can't get back in. until you actually repair it. And so, we've been doing a lot of that. We have a protocol where it actually strips all this nanotech, all pathogens, stealth pathogens, all these things out of the body using timeline splitting and separating them on a different timeline. And then we do a DNA change where it resets the DNA of your whole body back to the blueprint in the Akashic Records. And it's had amazing difference. We've worked on about 800 people up to now over the last couple of years. And yeah, it's really helped people get rid of Morgellons, get rid of Lyme disease, get rid of the needly things, and all that sort of thing. It's been amazing, but it's a big program. It takes about 20 to 30 weeks, depending on the person. But no, transhumanism is what they want. They want to reduce the population. They want to get the reptilian and all the draconians up here so they can actually live on the planet by reducing the oxygen. They don't care about the plants, and they'll just make sure there's enough people so they've got food to eat, and that's their kind of agenda.
Do you think the reptilians, you could say, for like a better word, are like the overlords here, and they believe that this is their domain?
Oh yeah, they do. Yeah, both the Anunnaki and Draconians, and actually Luciferians. That's why I think they've all got together, and they're working together. And the Greys, of course, as well. They've destroyed their planet, and they can't reproduce. That's why they're using human body parts. I mean, abductions were huge. But they stopped in 2017 because we had this meeting. Like I say, what's the difference between violation and education? Well, if you pick someone up in a beam without their consent, and they weren't shown it, before you come down here, then that's a violation, and it was agreed it's a violation. So the Galactic Federation, the Actorians swept them off the planet. They're still coming back through portals, but it's reduced the abductions phenomenally. So
Um, and I meant to say this a while ago, but I lost train of thought. But like I've said this many times on this podcast, I feel like we are connected connected collectively via some type of cosmic Wi-Fi mechanism. Um, and if we are all being programmed and governed by this force, these non-humans, whatever, the reptilians, whatever, I think it may be, of course, I think it's coming from the unseen realms. Maybe they are doing this via archonic type mind virus within the human race, or maybe this unseen force has learned over the eons how to hack and inject a virus within the collective cosmic Wi-Fi signal that we are all connected to. Some could call it the Akashic field or whatever. But if they have learned over the eons how to hack this collective field that we are all connected to, maybe that's another reason why it's so hard for the human race to stay and remain in this ultra high frequency. Maybe deep within
yeah,
our collective subconscious minds, we all had this alien mind virus. This alien mind virus has hijacked the human soul and the human spirit. And maybe you, I, and others who are listening to this, maybe we still have this alien mind virus within us, but it may not affect us as much as the rest of the world, uh, because we have a better firewall defense mechanism that helps us control this negative influence from the unseen.
yeah, absolutely. Well, years ago, many thousand years ago, they used to use telepathy. You didn't need to speak. How's that? Well, they had pyramids to have a high vibration through the ley lines. There's also a crystalline structure around the planet, which fills with, humanity's consciousness. Now, when all this started, just trying to think about, I used to clear it maybe once a month, with the Actorians. They used to fly, clear the consciousness, get rid of the energy. Everything felt great back up, for a month, and then it started going down. And then it was like every 3 weeks, and it's every 2 weeks. And now we do it once a week, but it's really not enough. But I believe that humanity needs to feel some things. Again, if you don't experience the darkness, when everyone takes care of everything for you, you never experience it. How do you know what the light is like? And it's got pretty dark right now, and we're clearing this crystalline structure. In the future, that's why we're doing the pyramids, because the planet's got to get back up to speed, get the energy flowing. This is a big project. It's billions of dollars where at Mali, but I've got bankers, and we've got one of the generals, who's working with us, which is really interesting. On that note, actually, it was very interesting because I did some remote viewing of some of these bunkers, with the kids and everything else. And I knew a military guy, well, this general, he went to see the commander, one of the commanders, the white hat commanders. And anyway, sat in front of him, and I was describing what was in there. And this commander got pictures and said, I'm going to give you a 48-hour briefing, and showed him all these pictures of the bunkers, exactly how I described. He goes, oh my God, I never realized this stuff was there. And I said, well, there you go. it's kind of crazy, until you actually see it. The problem with remote viewing is you can smell it as well, and that really, it's like smelling death. So I don't tend to remote view that stuff anymore because it makes you feel ill, physically ill, because you can smell the vibration of the death in there and see what's going on. And I thought once you've seen it, you don't really need to go there again. We're done, So yeah, very interesting.
And you talk about these frequencies and things like that. Do you think that's the reason why maybe they took the church bells out? They created this harmonic type frequency, and then maybe everybody meet at the town square where the church bell rings, and it could heal certain plagues and things like that back hundreds of years ago. And even
Oh
in
yeah,
the mid 20th century or so, they changed the frequency of music to from 432 to 440,
yeah.
and people prefer, 432 over 440, but now everything worldwide is collectively tuned at 440. It's almost like they know something with this frequency, and they know if maybe these frequencies, these lower vibrational frequencies that they implement, like through music and taking out the church bells, and even frequencies through our television screen, like there's no telling what's going on. That they know what's going on. They know what's going on to keep us in that lower vibrational state, because I do think that is another variable on the Christmas tree of deception to keep us in this brain drained, mind controlled, propagandized state, and it makes this more controllable and hackable, and where
Oh yeah.
we can do their bidding,
Well, even the LED lighting, that's tuned, it flickers at a high
Yes.
frequency, and
Yeah.
that's tuned to be negative to the body. The food, it's got toxins in it, and you look at everything, the water's got nano in it, everything, is kind of hijacked. That's why I always encourage people, again, maps of intent, because they say, well, what can I do about the food? If you go to a store, if it says organic, you don't know whether it's organic or not. People make money out of, oh, well, I'll just throw that in the organic bag and it's going to be another $3, and they don't care. So, again, using maps of intent, the power to me is in maps of intent prayer, manifesting that food, get rid of all the, our food prayer basically gets rid of all the God particles, optimizes the vibration of the food, blesses the souls of the animals and plants who allowed our body nutrition. So it's if you really say it, the food will taste different. I did a test actually. I took some strawberries from Walmart. They tasted really sour. I took them to this lecture I did, and there's about 30 odd people in the room. So I split them in two lots, A and B. Did the prayer of one of them, didn't do on the other one. Sent the first lot around and said, what do you think of these strawberries? Ew, they're sour and horrible, They taste like Walmart stuff, exactly. I said, try these, So I sent those round. Oh my gosh, they're gorgeous. I said, would you believe they're from exactly the same place, Walmart, same batch? And yet, one lot have been, prayed over, the other one none. So, we have the power. People think, I don't have the money to do anything in this world. They've got all the power, they've got all the money. Money's not power, Power is God, and the power is, to me, maps of intent, manifesting a different reality, changing your food, uh, pray over your water, get it back to the crystalline structure it should be,
You talking about
and
praying over
when,
water. You talking about praying over water. Maybe there's a reason why they prayed over water, and they called holy water to help cast out certain entities and malevolent, forces.
oh yeah, I mean, if you get water, and we've got a water prayer in there, if you do the water prayer, they're all on the website. So if you go use the water prayer, fill a glass of water, taste it, tastes dead. put your hands around it, focus on it, and say that, prayer or map of intent, and then try the water again. It's got energy in it. It changes the whole structure of it. It really does. Again, I've done this with people, and wow, yeah, the water tastes alive. It's got life in it. It's got energy force in it. So, to me, it's very important. We have all the tools. People just don't realize that the power is within you.
And since we're kind of on the health part, I guess we do you think that the pineal gland is it acts like a portal and or gateway for these entities and or dark forces to be able to manifest or attach through us from the other side? And the large amounts of melatonin that children produce via the pineal gland may also be a reason why kids see monsters and have a highly active imagination. Maybe they aren't actually seeing monsters and they don't have imaginations. Maybe they are actually real to a degree instead of make believe. That's
Oh yeah,
that may be another reason why the vast amount of people, the older they get, the imagination, paranormal experiences, and our spirituality can decline with age because the pineal gland calcifies and dampers our connection with God's source and these angelic beings.
yeah, absolutely. If it calcifies, it's going to shut it down. And we always, again, psychic surgery wise, on the twice a week, we always work on the pineal gland. And then because that beings go in and start breaking the calcification down, we also have meditation on it as well. So yeah, that could really help because, you can tell when your pineal gland's open. You look outside, you look at a tree, you can see every single leaf, and there's sometimes slightly different shades of green. It looks like high definition television with your own eyes. When you look at colors, they're really vibrant. Like, wow, that's beautiful, because you're seeing the energy from your third eye, your pineal gland. So I think that's one of the keys, to me, of really opening yourself up. But you're right about, children, they can see stuff. I could see stuff. Some kids see, all sorts of different things, good and bad, but I think they see through the veil because, their pineal gland's really wide open.
But yet they want us to dumb them down by dampering and killing their imagination and their creativity and that life, that spirit, that essence within them by giving them drugs and everything else under the sun by ADHD medications, Adderall and they know if you can attack the kids, attack them physically, mentally, spiritually, um, they are the future of this world. So you got to. So what better method of control manipulation than to attack the younger generation, the children that will help build this world into a better future. They know
Yeah.
if if we can create a younger generation that is depleted of that life essence, that soul, that spirit, everything else, and propaganda and mind control and all of that, that this world is going to be built and created in the image and likeness of these dark forces.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because you say the younger generation, I'm seeing a lot of kind of between 16 and 24-year-olds who are really struggling just to even stay alive. They don't know what to do themselves. I don't want to work outside because they're starseed people. They don't want to be in a corporation. They don't want to be told what to do. Don't want to get their driving license because they don't want to do anything. And they get depressed because they're not fitting in this world. They've probably, dare I say it, probably come in a bit too soon, and they can't cope with it. The way it is now. When it changes, I think these are the guys who are going to really sit well in the 5D world where, you don't have to worry about money or anything else. It's then working with people or whatever, but and they're all very gifted. They just don't know what to do themselves. And it's trying to persuade them to look at your gifts and again, get back into do some spiritual practice like meditation or, qigong, whatever you like doing, yoga. It all helps, but also doing some fun things. This world, I don't know about you, but I haven't found it a lot of fun over the last 4 years, 5 years. It's been it's been difficult. I find it fun because I've made the fun. But what I'm saying is, everything's changed. I don't like going shopping. I used to love going shopping with my wife, trying something on. Oh, that's great. Let's buy that. Not interested in that now. Neither of us are. Everything's changed.
everything seems stagnated.
It completely stagnated. Yeah, you go to a restaurant. I can cook better at home. Why would you want to go to a restaurant? And I'm no chef. But and so over a period of time. So sometimes we DoorDash stuff. Unfortunately, where we are here, DoorDash doesn't deliver. But it's sad that you don't feel like going out. And I think it's because the external energy around places now is pretty like, I would say, pea soup. It's very low vibration. And when you go out, I don't want to feel that. I want to feel joy. So
Well, because when you go out, and we're about to end this conversation with this time, but when you go out, just like rather it be a restaurant, a you're in traffic, rush hour, crazy traffic, just madness, Black Friday, just Walmart, oh my gosh, any day of the week at Walmart. Someone you can feel this presence, this lower vibrational energy, and it's almost like like we talked about, like NPC. Maybe a lot of these individuals are NPCs, or they had these negative uh forces attached to them. And I think the reason why we feel like it's lower vibration, or we can feel that lower vibration, is because it's almost like we are the ones, and people listening to this, we're a little bit more awakened than the average Joe. So we're like a beacon. We're a beacon of light. We actually have spirit and all that, and we're almost like an attraction to these beings, to these entities. And that's the reason why we feel this. We feel this sludge. We feel like we're stuck in mud when we go out like that.
absolutely. But the average person in the street who's not awake would not even notice. They just go to the restaurants and business as usual. And just follow the lead of mandates and things like this. So it's really interesting. I think life has changed, but you can make it enjoyable. I mean, we're on this planet for such a short blip. I don't want to ever waste one more day where I feel like miserable and everything else. So I always look for joy. I mean, coming on this morning, it's giving me joy. I love it. And then this afternoon we'll do a bit of cooking. Maybe sit out, have a beer. Who knows? But just being amongst people. The like-minded people. Um, you know, creating things within your safe environment. If that's your home, then entertain at home. You don't have to go to restaurants. You don't have to go shopping. It'll change, I'm sure, once the energy changes the planet, but at the moment it's pretty low vibration.
So one last question. Floor is yours. Before we end it, are you hopeful for the future of the world and the survival of our species?
Oh yeah, I know it's going to happen, full stop. I mean, we tried it in Atlantis, but it didn't quite happen then. And it got infiltrated by high-tech stuff again. They developed, stealth pathogens like leprosy and things like that. And then it fell. This time, I think we've got a grip of it. I think it's very different this time. It's interesting. People have often said, well, why don't you get the off-planet beings to just decalcify everyone's pineal gland? If you did that, they wouldn't be able to cope with anything. Oh my God, I've seen it done before on other planets. Doesn't work because people go insane because they don't know what to do themselves. So, it has to be a gradual development of awakening people. Otherwise you're going to get mentally ill people and huge amounts of people in asylums. Don't know how to operate in this world with the new way of seeing and downloading and things like this. So I think yeah, it's on track. Sure, on track. I mean, there's a certain element of people in this world who will never get it. It doesn't matter what you do. They'll just never get it. But I think a lot of people, like you say, elements are waking up in different areas, little by little. I think we're going to get there. I really do.
Well, Christopher Macklin, I appreciate your time. It was a treat, honor, and privilege. Thank you very much, my friend.
Bless you. Thanks, Michael. Bless your heart.